Black Skin, White Masks French, Peau Noire, Masques Blancs is a 1952 book by Frantz Fanon, a psychiatrist and intellectual from Martinique. The book is written in the style of autoethnography, in which Fanon shares his own experiences while presenting a historical critique of the effects of racism and dehumanization, inherent in situations of colonial domination, on the human psyche. There is a double process that is economic and internalized through the epidermalization of inferiority. Frantz Omar Fanon French. F's Fan 20 July 1925 to 6 December 1961, also known as Ibrahim Frantz Fanon, was a French West Indian psychiatrist and political philosopher from the French colony of Martinique, today a French department. His works have become influential in the fields of post-colonial studies, critical theory, and Marxism. As well as being an intellectual, Fanon was a political radical, pan-Africanist, and Marxist humanist concerned with the psychopathology of colonization and the human, social, and cultural consequences of decolonization. In Black Skin, White Masks, Frantz Fanon combines autobiography, case study, philosophy, and psychoanalytic theory in order to describe and analyze the experience of black men and women in white-controlled societies. He is especially interested in the experience of black people from French-colonized islands in the Caribbean, like himself, who have come to live in France themselves. He explores how these people are encouraged by a racist society to want to become white, but then experience serious psychological problems because they aren't able to do so. In Chapter 1, Fanon explores the relationship between race, language, and culture. For Fanon, language provides entry into a culture, so when someone speaks French, they are taking on the French culture. But when black people speak French, they are always reminded they can never be fully French. Moreover, they are told they do not have a civilized language of their own, unlike people from other white European countries like Germany or Russia. In this way, language is used to make black people feel they are uncivilized and without a history. As one consequence, black people who have been told they are inferior may develop a kind of inferiority complex and want to become superior by becoming white. This desire to become white is explored in chapters 2 and 3, which are about interracial relationships between black and white people. Fanon observes that black women may take a white lover in order to get access to a white culture that has more advantages and privileges. Similarly, black men may consider white women gatekeepers to culture, and marrying a white woman provides a feeling of having married all the beauty, education, and wealth that whiteness stands for in racist societies. But because black people can never leave behind the fact of their blackness, fleeing from their race is also fleeing from themselves. This leads to a loss of a sense of self and in turn a loss of agency to act in the world. In chapters 4 and 5, Fanon develops this analysis of the inferiority complex of black people and the impossibility of leaving behind the fact of being black. For Fanon, it is important to realize that black people do not naturally feel they are inferior. Rather, this feeling is created by racism, which says whites are superior to blacks and gives whites more economic advantages. When black people internalize their oppression as a personal failure, this is when an inferiority complex arises. It is also constantly reinforced in everyday life in racist societies, because black people are constantly reminded they are black first and people second. In other words, people are reduced to their race, instead of seen as unique human individuals. In Chapter 6, Fanon provides more specificity for what it means to be reduced to one's race. In European societies, Fanon argues, the only cultural representations of black people are in ways that make them seem animalistic. They are a symbol for the biological, which means they are primarily depicted as bodies rather than as people with minds and feelings. This also leads to the over-sexualization of black people, because blackness becomes associated with the biological fact of reproduction. European society is full of images of the virility and aggressiveness of black men, for instance, from whom white women are said to need protection. This is one of the ways in which blackness is depicted as an evil other. Fanon says this is similar to how Jews are feared in European society. But whereas the Jew is seen as a political threat, the black man is seen as a biological threat. In the final chapters of Black Skin, White Masks, Fanon explores how people might move beyond this situation in which black people are depicted as inferior and often develop a feeling of inferiority as well. He dismisses theories by other psychiatrists that would solve the neurosis of an individual black man by asking him to adjust his expectations and face reality. Instead, he wants social solutions that transform the racist society that produced conditions of inequality to begin with. Black people need to be encouraged to transform society by demanding humanity from white people, asserting freedom, and building a future freed from the subjugation of the past. In Chapter 2 of Black Skin, White Masks, Frantz Fanon discusses the experience of the Negro woman in French society. He does this by way of Mayat Capeche's novel I Am a Martinician Woman, which is about a woman from the Caribbean island of Martinique. According to Fanon, black women in racist societies are taught to associate superiority with white culture, and black women seek to marry white men as a way of accessing this culture. Entering into romances with white men is one way black women try to become white themselves, in order to join the class of people society considers superior. But, according to Fanon, this creates a number of psychological difficulties. Black women will always be black, and any attempt to leave behind their race will require a disassociation that leaves behind a part of themselves. Like the Negro woman, the Negro man in a racist society also, according to Fanon, wants to be white. Like the Negro woman, one way he goes about this is by dating white women, who seem to be gatekeepers to white society. But the Negro man must also encounter psychological disturbances in this interracial relationship, because he will always be reminded of how society thinks he is inferior. A major theme through Black Skin, White Masks is a desire on the part of black people to be white. In chapters 2 and 3, Fanon discusses this in relation to interracial relationships, where having a white lover seems to provide access to a formerly prohibited white world. For Fanon, the desire to be white derives from the power differential within a society. In other words, people see that white people have more opportunities and economic advantage, and they desire to become white in order to join that sphere of opportunity. However, black people can't actually become white. They will always be black, according to Fanon, and so the desire to be white causes a psychological problem of losing a sense of oneself. Fanon draws upon the philosophical work of Hegel and others in order to argue for the ways in which a sense of oneself is produced by how one is seen by others. Black people, for instance, do not think of themselves as black until someone who is white, a white other, recognizes them as such and imposes a sense of inferiority upon them. This means identity categories are always produced through interaction and relationships that involved people with different social positions. An important argument to which Fanon returns more than once is that black people don't naturally feel inferior. Instead, their sense of inferiority is produced by racist societies. Because of the recognition involved in identity, white people create their own sense of superiority by saying blacks are inferior. You can't have superiority without inferiority, and black people come to have this position. As a result, getting rid of an inferiority complex in black people isn't just a matter of correcting a neurosis in an individual. It requires the transformation of an entire society in which this hierarchy of inferiority and superiority is perpetuated.